Welcome back. It's Breakdown. SEC versus the Big Ten. Today is October 13th, 2021. JJ, how you feeling?
Feeling pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm feeling well. Hey, we're going to talk about the Big Ten and the SEC again today. We're going to start out with some games that were played last week. The big one, upset of the year so far, maybe. Texas A&M beating Alabama. What you think about that game? And how good is Alabama?
I think Alabama is pretty good. I think they're probably better than their current ranking at number 5. But I think what that game did is it exposed Alabama's weaknesses, and that was obvious on the offensive line as Bryce Young was under pressure all game.
Alabama struggled in week 3 against Florida. Is Alabama the Alabama of old?
No, Alabama lost 4 top 15 NFL draft picks on the offensive side of the ball, and they also lost a pretty good percentage of their tackles and snaps played on the defensive side of the ball last year. So I don't think that they are the same team.
Okay. We're going to be jumping back and forth on a lot of things because there's a lot of things to talk about. JJ, I'm going to ask you the question that I've been on my mind, and that is today, right now, not tomorrow, next week, next year, or yesterday, but today, is the SEC a better football conference than the Big Ten?
Well, I think that depends on how you choose to look at it. Do you value depth or do you value top heavy elite powers? Because I think right now SEC has more depth. They have 10 teams in the top 25.
Say that again. How many?
10.
They have 10 teams in the top 25.
SEC has, I believe, no. Okay, you know they have 7. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah,
they have 7, and the Big Ten has 5.
Okay. So from a depth perspective, the Big Ten is better. But if you look at the top heavy part, who's better?
Well, all 5 of Michigan's teams that are ranked are in the top 10.
All 5 of the SEC teams are in the top 5 so half of the top 10 teams are from the Big Ten.
Yeah, only 2 SEC teams are in the top 10.
So that would lead me to say to conclude that the Big Ten is a better conference today than the SEC. Who would have thunk it? Now, I want to talk about some big games coming up. Probably the biggest in the SEC is the only 2 undefeated team left in the SEC, Kentucky and Georgia. Georgia is a whopping 23-point favorite in that game. You buying that?
Yeah, Georgia's allowed 2 touchdowns all season, and one was in garbage time against South Carolina. I think after they already had accumulated a 20-some point lead in the 4th.
So through six games, their defense has allowed 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, and their first team defense has allowed 1 touchdown.
Okay, Kentucky has beaten the last 2 weeks. They've beaten Florida. They've beaten LSU, traditional powerhouses in the SEC. What does that say about Kentucky?
I mean, on one hand, you have to congratulate Kentucky. They don't normally beat either one of those schools, but Florida, for example, I think they've beaten them twice in the past 35 years. So, I mean, that's the second time, and both of those wins have come under the watch of Mark Stoops. So you have to feel pretty good for them in that respect. But the Florida that they beat was not Florida at its apex. The LSU that they beat is an LSU that is getting ready to fire their coach. So those were name wins more than they were substance wins to me.
Just a look at Kentucky's schedule. I predict even if they lose to Georgia, they would only have, in my mind, 1 challenge down the season, and that's not really a huge challenge. That would be a challenge against Tennessee. So Kentucky could, in my mind, go 10-2, almost guaranteed. 11-1, very possible. And if they pull the big upset this coming Saturday at Athens, Georgia, they could go 12-0.
Yeah, they could. They have the conference's leading rusher in Chris Rodriguez, and they have the conference's leading receiver in Wandale Robinson. But I do not believe in their quarterback, the transfer from Penn State, Will Levis. He had a really dynamite performance in his first start at Kentucky, but since then he's just, he looked poor against Chattanooga. He didn't look great against, South Carolina, Florida.
Okay.
So I don't believe that they have the ability to give Georgia a challenge, but they absolutely could, win outside of that. They could beat Tennessee for only the fourth time in my lifetime. I think they could, go 11-1 and go to a New Year's Day bowl, which would be like an insane achievement for the University of Kentucky. That's
a basketball school.
Yeah, that's
well. They're a football school for now, and their football team is looking good. But I'm kind of like you, man. Boy, that defense from Georgia is really, really good. And as you said, Kentucky did not. They barely got by South Carolina, and I'm not impressed with South Carolina at all. 23 points is a lot of points, though. If this game was at Kentucky, I would jump on 23 points in a heartbeat. But it's in Athens. And I know Arkansas went to Athens as the number, I think, 8 team in the country, and they got smoked. And I mean smoked. And speaking of smoke, I love the running back name for Kentucky, Smoke. Even though he's not their leading rusher.
Cavassier Smoke?
I like that name. His parents they must have did a little cognac drinking and a little bit of smoking and they come up with a name like that. But I like that name a lot. Interesting. Okay, we'll get back to some other games in the SEC, but the Big Ten. How about that big game last week, Penn State and Iowa?
Yeah.
What did we learn from that game?
Well, we learned that Penn State's backup quarterback can't really carry them when Sean Clifford goes down. Sean Clifford's the third leading rusher and only like 20-some yards behind their first leading rusher.
Okay.
And he's obviously the quarterback, so he's incredibly important to what Penn State does. And, Penn State was up 20 to, 26? They were up huge, and then they ended up losing 23-20. So I think that told you a little bit that Penn State, they can't weather their best player sustaining a major injury. So he's going to have to be back for...
Which is true for a lot of teams, I would say. Yeah. What's your take on the Big Ten, JJ? There's only one team in the West that's undefeated, the Big Ten West Division. And that's an easy pick. But the Big Ten East, boy, I look at the Big Ten East, man, and I just start salivating about these teams once they start playing each other. And they have not played each other yet. I'm talking about Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, and Penn State. 3 state schools in there, and one that's not a state. So we, just based on that alone, I would have to say that the one that's not a state school might be the worst one of the bunch. But who knows? That's why they play the games. What's your take on those 4 teams, JJ?
It's a gauntlet, They have 4 teams in the top 10. And I think Ohio State should still be the favorite to win the Big Ten East.
Really?
Yeah, I think C.J. Stroud is a top 4 Heisman candidate. I think their running back Henderson is, shown a lot of versatility and dynamic playmaking abilities, and they still got Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. They still have some dynamic weapons in the passing game. I think, they don't have the pass rushers that they used to, but everyone in college football is down.
I agree with you there. I think everyone in college football is down. But you mentioned those. I mentioned those 4 teams, and you mentioned Ohio State has been the favorite.
They've been dominating. What they did to Rutgers was, Michigan State and Michigan both play Rutgers, and they did not have those outcomes. They did not.
Okay, but did you think Ohio State maybe ran the scores up? And do you think maybe if Michigan or Michigan State wanted to do so?
No, I don't think that they could have.
You don't think they? Do you think Ohio State intentionally ran the score up?
I think so. I think you play to win the game, so I think you get as much. Look, there's a limited amount of reps that these guys have.
Okay.
They need to execute and play at a high level at they need to perform on each and every rep so they can get better. It's a limited opportunity to get better.
I want to ask you about these.
So I don't have any problems running the score up.
What's Penn State's best win?
I believe that would be Auburn.
Okay. What's Ohio State's best win?
I mean, Rutgers or Maryland.
Ooh. I don't know about Maryland, although they were undefeated until they played their last 2 games. What's Michigan State's best win?
That's a good question. I mean, because we know that Miami was fraudulent, so I don't want to put them there. Nebraska's 3-3 and lost to Illinois, so I don't know what to say about that. And Rutgers is they're better than what they used to be. But
Michigan State's score was impressive against Rutgers to me, and they didn't run.
It was what 31-13.
Yeah.
It was okay. I don't know what their best one is.
What's Michigan's best win? I would say
probably
Washington
at Wisconsin.
Okay, I was gonna say Washington or Wisconsin.
Yeah, Camp Randall, like even Wisconsin, even as poorly as Wisconsin has been playing with their quarterback play and everything, Camp Randall's a hard place to go into.
And Wisconsin is 2-3 today.
Yeah, I mean, okay. But what is the record of?
I'm sorry. Yeah, they're 2-3.
Yeah.
Wisconsin's 2-3.
So maybe Washington, because Washington only has 1 loss, I think, or 2 losses. They lost to Michigan, and they lost to Montana. But I think they've been playing pretty well since then.
Okay, the other undefeated, Iowa. You said you picked Ohio State to win the Big Ten. You can pick Ohio State over Iowa?
Yeah, because Iowa has to play Ohio State.
What about the wins? Iowa's wins. They have win over Penn State. They have win over Iowa State. And at the time, they had win over Indiana, which was a top 20 school. Mm-hmm. Iowa wins are not more impressive to you than Ohio State wins?
Iowa's resume is more impressive, but that's...
Their personnel is not what it sounds like.
Yeah, I don't think if Iowa were to face Ohio State on a neutral field, which very well could happen in Indianapolis, I don't think Iowa would be a favorite. I think Iowa would be a touchdown underdog. I predict that Iowa will be a touchdown underdog.
I will grant you this. Ohio State quarterback, to me, seems to have been getting better and better as the season has progressed. I'll say that much, but I just feel that this year in particular, it's going to be a huge shakeup. The normal teams that have gone to the NFL playoff, and we mentioned this before, the Alabamas, the Ohio State, the Clemsons, the Oklahoma, the Notre Dame. I think all 5 of those schools could potentially be watching that game this year, or those games this year. I just feel it coming on, and I don't know why, but I think I would look for either Iowa or Michigan State to win the Big Ten.
Well, I don't think Michigan State.
What's Michigan State's weakness? Tell me their weakness.
I think their weakness is their defense.
But what do you overcome that weakness with your offense?
I don't think that they can.
They've been doing it.
Yeah, they have. I mean, Michigan and Michigan State, neither one of them has played a really... neither one has... Have any of them beaten a bowl team? A team that's decided...
There would be a bowl game this year or last year?
Yeah, this year. I mean, Michigan beat Western Michigan, who beat Pitt, but then Western Michigan just sustained the loss to, I don't know, Ball State.
You know, although we are halfway through their schedule, Michigan has played 6 of their 12 games. They're undefeated. I will agree, things will get tougher. The Big Ten East, boy, that's the place where you want to watch the games. You want to watch Michigan and Michigan State. You want to watch Michigan and Ohio State. You want to watch Michigan and Penn State. You want to watch Penn State play Ohio State, Michigan State, and Michigan. All of those games you gotta watch. And and they've yet to happen. So it's going to be hard to predict, but I'm going to go on that limb and I'm going to pick Michigan State. The reason I'm going to do it because I like their coach.
No.
I think he has gotten a lot. He's turned that team around. Their offense is so balanced with the pass and the run. And my Heisman Trophy winner, if I had a vote right now, would be Mr. Walker, Walker the Junior, Walker the second.
Kenneth Walker the third.
Oh, the third. Excuse me, Mr. Walker. Yeah, I am very much impressed with Michigan State. I don't think it's a fluke. And I just think that the upper echelons is going to change. And we will come back when the bowl selection is made, the playoff tournament, and we will see if those normal 5 teams are there. Of those 5 teams, I do think maybe Oklahoma is the one who can be there, but I don't think Ohio State. I don't think Notre Dame. We know Clemson won't be there. I don't think Alabama will be there. I don't think Alabama struggled against Florida big time. They struggled against Texas A&M. Alabama, they still have Auburn to play. And they still have Tennessee to play. You know, that's a team, don't sleep on Tennessee. Tennessee has lost 2 games, but I think I think they're a better team than their records.
Alabama still has Arkansas to play, and they're ranked higher than either Auburn or Tennessee.
That's true. That's true. So we'll see. And even if Alabama did win the West, they can't get by Georgia.
I think that they could, but
Okay.
I guess that's why we're here. I also don't think Michigan State. I think Michigan State's probably of the 4 teams in the Big Ten East that are considered contenders. I think that they're probably the worst.
Number 4. Okay.
But I definitely still think Ohio State not only has the best a chance, but I think they have the best odds of coming out of the Big Ten.
CJJ, I think you're basing your decisions on personnel
And coaching, and
so who's the best coach out of those 4 teams on the East in the Big Ten? Who has the better coach, the best coach?
well, I think the best resume would either be, I mean, just because of the longitudinal aspect of it, you'd have to say Harbaugh based on what he did in Stanford, or James Franklin based on what he did at Vanderbilt and Penn State. I think the best coach in the Big Ten is Ryan Day at Ohio State. I think he's only been there for a couple of years, but he's been to 2 college football playoff games and 2 seasons of making the college football playoff, and I think time will shake out as him being the.
I think he had the personnel to get him there. What's your evaluation of Mr. Mel Tucker?
That helps.
What's your evaluation of Mr. Mel Tucker?
I think he's a good coach. I think the best coaches nowadays have to be good delegators and good uniters, and I think he's done a good job delegating the offensive responsibilities to the coordinator and uniting the team as a whole. How your offense, defense, and special teams plays is reflective of your head coach, and I think that they have a balance in all 3 of those areas, not just the offense and the defense, but or just on the offensive side of the ball with 2 receivers. Their 2 leading receivers are within 2 yards of one another, and then they have Kenneth Walker the third, who has 913 rushing yards through 6 games. So
Impressive.
And, a quarterback that's better than Rocky Lombardi for sure, and who knows what his ceiling is in sophomore Peyton Thorne. So I think that's a good sign. I think Michigan State is doing a good job transitioning from the D'Antonio years, and I think that he's a good coach. But I think the Big Ten East has a plethora of good coaches. They have a plethora of good programs. Ohio State,
I agree.
Michigan, Penn State. Those are jobs that will attract name brand coaches. So
Indiana is playing Michigan State this coming week without
the reigning Big Ten Coach of the Year,
and without their quarterback.
Yeah.
How do you see that game? It's at Michigan State. I'm sorry, it's in Indiana, Bloomington.
Yeah, I mean, without Sean Clifford, I would say that gives Indiana more of a chance. But I think Penn State's going to want revenge for the.
I mean, I'm talking Michigan State and Indiana.
Oh.
Michigan State is at Indiana this week.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Indiana hasn't been the team that they were predicted to be the start of the year. I think.
And Bennett will not be playing Saturday.
Yeah, he came back too soon from his ACL tear. He should have probably listened to his body and not just listened to a college football schedule. You know, sometimes everyone isn't Adrian Peterson. Everyone can't just make it back in 8 months and just be the exact same player. So I think their season has gone taking a turn downhill because of their quarterback play and some other key returners. They Freifo was back, their receiver, and their running back, the leading rusher from last year are also back. But I don't know if they're making the impact that they were supposed to either.
I tend to agree with you. I do think Penix came back probably earlier than he should have because he was so dynamic last year up until the injury, and then it just hasn't been the same this year. Hopefully, for his sake, he will eventually be back to his old self. The Big Ten West, there's not much to talk about once you get past Iowa, and I think Iowa's going to control that easily. The Big Ten East is where the fun is for all of us fans. I said we would get back to the SEC. Is there anything in the SEC that strike your fancy? I'm kind of interested in LSU and the Florida game this week. It's at LSU. Both teams are down. Florida's lost 2 games. LSU has lost 3. Florida is a favorite in that game. Do you see LSU putting up a fight?
No, their quarterback has been good, but I think Florida is better. Florida is the best rushing team in the SEC. They control the line of scrimmage, and I think they won't have any problems doing that against LSU. If you saw what Kentucky did to LSU last week.
Yeah.
I mean, Kentucky versus Florida was a battle that came down to the end. Kentucky versus LSU was not.
True. I watched a lot of that game Saturday night. Wow. Let's talk about a game that's dear to my heart. Saturday. It's another noon start for the Arkansas Razorbacks. It's their 3rd one in a row, I believe. It'll be their 3rd one in a row, and they're playing Auburn. What's your take on that game? Auburn actually played a semi-decent game against Georgia last week. What's your take on the Razorback argument?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think Auburn had a better showing against Georgia than Arkansas did. That's for sure.
Offensively, defensively, they give about the same amount of points.
Yeah, but I think Arkansas's defense was just exposed against Ole Miss. But on the other side of the token, their offense went toe to toe with Ole Miss's dynamic, explosive offense. So I don't think Bo Nix is the quarterback, and I don't think Auburn has the receivers to exploit big plays in the vertical passing game against Arkansas, which Matt Corral and Ole Miss's receivers absolutely had. They had that artillery to do so. I don't believe Bo Nix will. I think the better quarterback is KJ Jefferson. He outplayed Matt Corral, who is still a Heisman candidate and could still, seemingly take home the trophy in New York, depending on how the rest of the season plays out. Bo Nix has the name, he has the legacy, he has the famous dad, but I think the better quarterback will be the guy who resides in Fayetteville, and I think Arkansas should win that one.
Arkansas is a 4.5 point favorite, and Arkansas will be home for the first time in 3 weeks.
Much needed after those 2 losses.
Well, even they had 3 road games in a row. Even though the Texas A&M game, Arkansas was considered home.
It's a neutral site, I feel like.
It's still a road game to me.
It's a road game for both teams, I feel like.
I agree.
Which is a neutral site.
Arkansas been on the road for 3 straight weeks. They get back home this week. I think the home field could push them over in that game, but hopefully I'm right.
Well, Vegas, you said they're 4.5.
4.5 point, which is kind of
normally
surprising.
That's what Vegas gives college football home. When they think it's a toss-up, right? They give home field advantage about 4.5 points to 6.
Okay. Well, JJ, we've gone through a lot of the Big Ten SEC's matchups. I know there were a few other things that you had thought we might talk about. What would you like to what's on your agenda that you would like to discuss? I know you had mentioned the teams that are coming into the SEC that played the Red River rivalry game. Uh,
Yeah, just wanted to make a little touch on that just because Oklahoma and Texas will one day be part of the SEC,
yeah.
maybe as soon as next year. And Texas gave up the biggest.
Lead.
They gave up their biggest lead in the Red River rivalry. That's a little harder to say.
Say that 10 times.
They gave up their biggest lead in a defeat to their second string quarterback, and the guy who was the Heisman favorite and projected to be the number one pick in the NFL draft, he's being benched and is going from potential first overall pick to not even the first quarterback named in the locker room in favor of Caleb Williams. So that's pretty interesting. I don't know if you know anything about Spencer Rattler, Oklahoma's quarterback.
Well, I just know he was the favorite to win the Heisman.
Yeah, well, he was in a documentary when he was in high school called QB1, where he was the most obnoxious person I've ever seen. So a lot of it, he alienated a lot of his Oklahoma Sooner fan base even before he got out to campus, just based on the way he acted in that documentary. So.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of speculation that he might be transferring to a West Coast team, or specifically Arizona team, since that's where he played high school football. But that was just a little.
Well, getting benched will make people start talking about transfer.
And it's never been easier to transfer without penalty for players, so you don't have to sit out that year
That's
anymore.
true. JJ, I want to ask you about your Final Four pick right now. If you the 14 to, and there's a couple of them I want to ask you about. I won't keep you long. The college Final Four, not the NFL, the college football playoff. If you had to pick 14, I know it's super early because the conference hadn't gotten deep. The Big Ten still got a lot of Eastern teams to play each other. But who are your 4 teams right now?
Oklahoma, I think with them beating Texas, I think that they have a clear path to.
What if they play Texas again in the next round? Texas win in the championship game.
Then I think it would be hard for a Big 12 team to field a college football playoff team.
But right now you're saying Oklahoma's 1.
Oklahoma would be 1. I think they have the clearest path.
Okay.
I guess Georgia would be another.
Georgia.
The number 1 team in the country. I am not going to pick Cincinnati or Iowa, the number.
Really?
I'm not going to pick either one of those teams.
How can you not pick Cincinnati?
Because I don't think I think they would need multiple conferences to have 2 lost. I don't think an undefeated Cincinnati will jump on 1 loss. Big Ten, SEC. I mean, potentially.
They won't have to jump them. They're already ahead of them.
They're ahead of them in the AP poll, but the college football playoff
you don't think
committee
that's
hasn't.
the
They
case.
haven't.
Right. They haven't issued it. Right.
So
Okay.
we don't know where they stand on that respect. They're counting on a lot. They're counting a lot on Notre Dame to have a great season because that's their best win. They're counting on Indiana to pull some upsets and become bowl eligible, because they don't have a lot of significant wins or opportunities to attain to.
Wow. I had definitely penciled in Georgia and Cincinnati as 2 replacement that for the traditional 5.
Yeah, I mean, if Alabama were to lose again, and Georgia lost to Florida, and then Georgia lost to whoever won the SEC West, I could see there is a path to it where I don't think that there was one before, but I still think Cincinnati's going to find themselves on the outside looking in.
Will the Big Ten get 2 teams in the playoffs?
I think they just get Ohio State.
What about Michigan and Michigan State or Penn State? Well,
I think Ohio State's going to beat Michigan, Michigan State, and Penn State. They do it a lot.
My. Okay, JJ. I had another question. I can't remember what it was. maybe they'll come to me. But before we move on to another subject, is there any Big Ten SEC items that you want to mention? You never actually finished with all four of your teams, so go ahead and finish with your four teams first, and then I'll ask you that question.
So Georgia, Oklahoma, Ohio State, and I think Alabama will probably beat Georgia in the SEC championship game. So I think Georgia's gonna get the at-large bid, and Alabama will get the conference slot.
I cannot see that, but time will tell. I was going to ask you, JJ, really quickly because I know I want to get out of here in about 2 minutes. And this does not relate to college sports, but what's your take on John Gruden and the 10-year-old emails?
Well, in relation to college sports, I don't think Tennessee will be hiring him anytime soon. I think, those emails were filled with vitriol. I think it's probably wise to assume that, if you're sending emails to a work account, they're not secure, you shouldn't consider them to be private the way you might have once considered them to be. But I think he was unnecessarily cruel and mean to a lot of different minority groups and underrepresented people, and I don't think that it's funny because there's a lot of people that went back and to see what he said outwardly when Michael Sam got drafted and he was congratulating.
So what did he say?
He said things that were 180 degrees different from what he said in the emails. He was talking about how he thought it was wonderful that Michael Sam was getting this opportunity. Same thing I think when it came to they're talking about the first couple of women officials and women hired on Bruce Arians' staff or any other staff. I think he was publicly very much in support. And also if what he said about people kneeling for the anthem, he said he was in support of Colin Kaepernick and what he did publicly.
I never knew he said that.
Yeah, and then if you look at what he emailed people, you can tell that was not actually.
So which is the true Mr. Gruden?
I think the true Mr. Gruden is the one that he didn't show to everyone.
Okay. Well, JJ, we've kept the people here for about 30 minutes. We're about ready to get out of here. Is there anything you want to add or comment on, or any topic you want to hit on before we get out of here?
No, just would ask you in kind of, do you have any thoughts on the recent developments of the emails and everything?
I think he had to go. I guess he had to go, and I really would be surprised if a school picked him up. I think his best shot now, if he wants to stay in the sports world, is to create a podcast or something like that to compete with you and me. But I don't think he could really compete with us. I think we got him bested. So if he like being number 2, he can do a podcast or a YouTube video or whatever. Does that work for you?
That'd be fine for me.
All right. Thanks everyone for checking out Breakdown. You guys have a good week. Peace. We out.
We'll pick Suey.
WPS.